Today's video will be addressing the truth of property investors and who they are. You see, 4 years ago, I was sitting in a seminar, a free seminar, and they were sharing with us about property investing. I'd attended the seminar against my will. My husband said, "Come, babe, let's go, give it a thought, open your mind." And so I did. You see, at the time, I really had a block because we were in a business that had failed so badly. And I wondered, why did this guy want to go to a property investing seminar? Like, where are we going to get the money to invest? So nonetheless, we go to this seminar. We're sitting and I'm closed up, irritated as heck. And then I heard no money down. That's when I really got to paying attention. Not long after that, they spoke about you will be meeting property investors. So then I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. At least the property investors will be there, because if there's a no money down strategy, we can meet property investors to fund this this particular deal, then at least this is worth going to. So nonetheless, we signed up, we had gone through the training. So if you stay until the end of this video, you're going to hear how the story unravels, and then you get to learn the truth of who property investors are. So welcome to my channel. My name is Genevieve Stafford Jack. So as I shared, we went through to this training. They did something very interesting. In the very early morning, they said to us, when you introduce yourself, say your name and say what you are, which is now, over the next 3 days, you are a professional property investor. So I would have to stand up in the class, and every time I ask a question, I had to say, "Hi, I'm Genevieve, and I am a professional property investor." So of course, everybody had to indulge, and if we forgot, people will remind each other. And as the course of this time had gone by, there was something that stuck in the back of my mind. And this was, we're going to meet their property investors. So before I even unpack meeting their property investors, I want to share with you, can I make this confession? Drop in the comments below, yes, make the confession. My confession is, when I got to the class, even before that, I had in my mind a property investor to be a tycoon of sorts, somebody with loads and loads of money. They had to be rich. I mean, they had to have literal richness or wealth coming out of their pores. That was my perception of what a property investor was. And so I was waiting to meet these tycoons. I was wondering, was this whole class put together just for these people that require property, that those of us that are interested in creative finance will be helping along the way? Because surely this is a win-win situation. So with that, I've been waiting for the money to walk through the door, so to speak. And by the time we got to the end, I didn't quite meet these very rich people. And I went home thinking about it, like, when are we going to meet these investors? I had asked so many questions, but for some reason I had not tabled this question. And for a long time, even though I was repeating I'm a professional property investor, I was not seeing myself as the investor. So here's the truth about property investors. You and me alike, because we've gone through the education and we are pursuing the dream of investing in property, we are property investors. That became a shocking truth for me, thinking, oh, so I was meeting other students like me, and because they're professional property investors like I'm learning to be, these are the property investors I was promised. Partly, I must admit, I was so disappointed. I have to say that. I was so disappointed because I was thinking, what? Now I can be labeled, because I've got the education, a professional property investor. We're not going to meet these rich people that have got lots of money, And I was like, oh. But then as I got to thinking about it a little bit more, I laughed at my silliness. I was like, oh my gosh, Jen, you have totally lost all your marbles. You've lost all your marbles. What was so obvious and so in front of you, did you not see it? Now, today I make this video and I laugh because you see, in hindsight, when I started learning that property investors are people just like you and me, everyday people that may have access to a lot of money, or we may have access to the bank, or property investors like myself that have got the education may have access to people who've got the money they want to invest, and we could complement each other by means of a joint venture or maybe a sourcing deal, whichever creative finance strategies that are there. And this is how us as a duo can get going. Man, I was like, oh my gosh, this had to be the biggest realization for me yet. Well, so I thought. In the next minute or two, you'll find out why I say, so I thought. So life as it has it, we've continued, we've done the most in property investing, we've literally put in our blood, sweat and tears because we needed the creative finance strategy to help us. And if you don't know much about that, I'll pop up a few reference videos so that you can actually learn more about creative finance. Now fast forward. When I was approached by one of my clients to say, Jen, you've got the expertise in property, you've got the experience, and you've got property investing deals to show off, could you come freelance with us for a while and, just share your testimonial? And so I did that. I'd gone into a contract with them and I would share my experience. And as I'd go along the way, I was helping with training, and then I started with coaching. And you know what was very interesting for me? I learned how long later I was not the only one. I was not the only one that had this perception that I'm going to meet somebody with lots of money in the classroom because it is their property investors. In fact, it was as far as when I was being mentored into being a property coach, and I was along with the head coach at that time, and she was explaining to her students, they were doing some goal sort of strategy, and the one student kept on asking, but when are we going to meet these property investors? When we had a bit of a meet and greet months later, that same student was asking, but guys, it's high time now we meet these property investors. And this is why I thought to myself, I was clearly not the only one, but I was in a position at that point to really start understanding how people understood what I understood. Or maybe because of our preconceived ideas of what a property investor was, this is where my mind and that student mind and a number of other students that I've met after that, maybe this is where our minds went. But the truth of who a property investor actually is, a property investor is someone like you, someone like me. If you are working and you've got an 8 to 5 job, you've got access to money from the bank, and your credit scoring is in good stead, you can access the bank's money to buy your property, hold that property, and rent it out. The rental income that comes through will pay off the bond and other expenses that come with this particular property. So while you are working, the bank's money is actually working for you. Because as you go along the way, we are taught to go and find properties that are under market value. So when you've already bonded this property, you bought into equity. Meaning if you bought this property at 300,000, but on market value, because of all the renovation and things that needed to happen in this property, it is now worth 600,000. You have bought a potential up to 300,000 equity. And that's what a lot of clever property investors do. They buy into equity so that they can leverage the bank's money. Now that you've got equity, eventually they refinance, take out that equity, and go and buy a whole new property on its own as a cash deal, right? The rental income that comes there will be able to cover all of the different expenses of these properties. And so the multiplication continues. And that was for me the fascinating truth about who property investors are. If we cannot look in the mirror and actually use what we have at our disposal, we may not see what others see during education. I never looked at myself as a property investor because I was in debt when I started in property investing and I needed to use the creative finance route. I still, for a very long time, did not see myself as a property investor. But what I really started understanding later, and I told myself, because this was partly to also calm myself, I suppose, is that I am a person that is vested in property. And I still call myself a property entrepreneur because there's other facets of property that I get involved in. And I'm like, alrighty then, now I see. So I wonder, now that we're coming to the end of this video, who did you think property investors are? Were you like me? You had this misconception or this preconception that a property investor is just somebody that's got lots of money? But I find that this is a valid question to answer. So the shocking truth of who a property investor actually is, I repeat it, is somebody just like you and me. So I trust that this video has been informative for you because it took me a very long time to have that shift. And I've seen it so many times in students before that I know I would have shortchanged you if I did not share with you what I believe is the shocking truth and who a property investor actually is. So take good care and I'll see you soon.